So today is the birthday of someone important to me. She really likes horses, so one of the story cubes in this week's video will be replaced by a horse. Happy birthday! Once upon a time, there was a horse named Sheep. Christopher Harklin, who lived on the farm down the road, gave her the name after a long and difficult day of maths and lettering at school. It's funny, you see, because she's not a sheep. She's a horse. That's stupid, said Billy, who didn't much like Christopher. You're stupid, Christopher's best friend Anton shot back. No, because she has 4 legs like a sheep and has a long face like a sheep. But she's a horse, so we should call her Sheep. Christopher was 7 and quite secure in his logic. But this is not a story about Christopher, or Billy, or Anton. This is about a horse named Sheep. Sheep was an ordinary horse. She liked to eat grains and hay and grass. If she was lucky, from time to time, the people who lived on the farm with her would pass her an apple or a carrot. She liked to run when it was windy and splash in the puddles when it rained, but her absolute favorite thing to do, when the sky was clear and the day was warm, was sneak through a gap in the fence to the sunflower field and roll around in them until she tired herself out and fell asleep. The humans were not particularly pleased with this, as more than a few of them ended up crushed underneath her, and the seeds and petals that got stuck in her coat and mane took ages to brush out. Sheep didn't care. It was on one such day that she found it. The chickens had gotten loose again, so the humans on the farm were quite distracted and didn't notice her sneaking off to the sunflowers. The flowers closest to the barn had already been trampled by her the week before, so she ventured farther in. She plopped onto the ground, fully intending to roll herself silly, when she felt something hard and rectangular poking into her side. Rolling off of it, she turned to see what to you and I would look like a wizard's spellbook, thick and heavy with gemstones set into a deep blue cover and long-forgotten knowledge whispering from within. But to Sheep looked rather like a bluish box with shiny bits on it that was not a sunflower. She nudged it to get it out of the way and startled when it opened, creamy white pages glowing with reflected sunlight. Curious now, she gave it a tentative lick, then another. It tasted like the sweetest grass and crunchiest oats she'd ever eaten. She nibbled carefully on the corner of a page, and when it continued to be delicious, ate 4½ sheets of it before pushing it aside to enjoy the sunflowers. She managed a full 30 minutes of rolling around before being caught and brought back to the enclosure. The book laid unseen under a mess of bent stems and crushed petals, where it would remain undiscovered until a glint of sunlight hit one of the gems and caught the attention of a passing crow, and it was carried off. The next day, Sheep was different. She blinked her eyes open at the first rays of daylight and realized with quiet surprise, "Oh, I'm a horse." Marveling at this discovery, she stepped outside of the stable and up to the edge of the fence and understood. She understood that there was a whole world out there, not just fields of sunflowers and roads and towns beyond it, but vast turbulent oceans and deserts and forests such as she'd never seen before in her life. For the first time in her horsey existence, she wanted more than oats and apples and flowers. There was so much out there, and she wanted to see it all. So it was that she pulled her favorite blanket over her back, grabbed a mouthful of hay to eat on the road, and set off. The dirt path leading away from her home looked different when she walked it alone. She began noticing forks in the road she'd never bothered to see before, for someone had always been near to tell her where to go. She elected to ignore them though, for they were so close to what was already familiar, and she wanted something new. Somewhere over the ocean, she decided, turning left on the main road to head into town. The complete opposite of where I am now. She considered her options as she approached the town. There was no land on the ocean. People traveled there by giant flying machines or by big empty water troughs that sat on top of the water. She didn't much like the idea of leaving land behind, but she liked the idea of flying through the air even less, and so resolved to go to the watery part of town where she'd seen them all congregating. Before that, though, there was something she needed. Something she'd heard one of the humans mention, but didn't know what it meant until now. A passport. Though Sheep didn't fully grasp the concept of borders and immigration laws, she did know that a passport was something you needed if you wanted to go somewhere that wasn't where you were from. But she wasn't sure where a fine horse such as herself might go about getting one of these. As she trotted through town, she caught sight of a building that seemed like it might have the answer. It was a small wooden thing with parkas and brochures in the window, and on the very top of it was a question mark. Sheep had a question, so she stepped on the black mat near the door to open it and walked in. The lady at the desk seemed quite startled to see her. Sheep walked up to her and asked her question. "Do you know where I can get a passport?" But the lady evidently could not speak horse and said nothing. Sheep couldn't speak human either, and was just beginning to lose hope of seeing the other side of the world, when the lady pulled a rectangle out of her pocket and began taking pictures with it. "Passports have photos," Sheep remembered, pleased. "Perhaps I can get one after all." However, when the lady did not begin assembling the required papers, but rather began speaking to someone who lived in the pocket rectangle, she realized that perhaps passports were not for horses. If she wanted one, she'd have to disguise herself as a human. Fortunately, the room she was in was filled with human stuff. She pulled a jacket off one of the racks and placed it on her back, then took one of the hats and flipped it in the air so she could get it to land on her head. She even went so far as to nudge her head into the glasses display, knocking more than a few of them on the ground until one managed to find its way to her face. Satisfied that she looked as human as she ever would, she returned to the desk. However, not only did the lady not provide a passport, but she and the other man who had entered the building approached Sheep with a harness, clearly intending to put it on. Disheartened that they wouldn't help, but not wanting to waste any more time, Sheep trotted to the door, waited for it to open for her, and left. Without a passport there was not much point in trying to get on the water, and the sky was beginning to darken, so she began heading vaguely towards home. On a whim, she walked in the fields rather than on the road, enjoying the feel of the tall weeds against her legs. Just before she hit the patch of sunflowers she loved so much, she came across a small pond that she'd never noticed before. In it was a tortoise that blinked up slowly at her as she approached. "Nice day," he nodded to her. "You speak my language," she exclaimed. "When you've been alive for a century, you pick up a few things. Won't you stay for a chat?" Delighted that her day would not come to a disappointing end, she settled in. Tomorrow, perhaps, she would try for the ocean again. For today, she was only glad that there were still new and unexpected things to discover close to home. She smiled at her new friend. "My name is Sheep," she said. "What's yours?" And with a slow, deliberate voice that can only come from one who has lived 100 years and will live 100 more, he answered, "Hello, Sheep. My name is Horse." What stories can you come up with the dice I rolled? If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Click the notification bell to get notifications from the bell. Thanks for watching. See you next time.